Bloomberg, 15th of August 2022, India under Modi is becoming a reflection of Pakistan's worries and Jinnah's optimism. Muhammad Ali Jinnah established Pakistan as a buffer state between India and Afghanistan. During the Great Game, the British were very alarmed by the thought of the jewel in the crown falling into Russian hands. Pakistan is a debt-ridden country riddled with extremism while being a nuclear power with a GDP per capita that is not far behind India's. It is governed by an army that controls state activities and is under the control of weak and dishonest civilian officials. Leaders of a young India cautioned Pakistanis in 1947 that they had made a mistake by insisting on their nation. Indians should remember why Muhammad Ali Jinnah, the founder of Pakistan, was keen to create a Muslim-majority nation out of erstwhile British India. He foresaw the necessity for Muslims to protect Hindus, who were peace-loving people, as well as the Northern Front. India is at risk of confirming his assertion 75 years later. Since 2014, the nation has been ruled by a Hindu nationalist administration headed by the charismatic Prime Minister Narendra Modi. India has become mature enough to stand on its own 2 feet after 75 years. Pakistan has done a fantastic job withstanding China's and the North's blows over the years. Politicians and the media have attacked Indian Muslims as political targets. Compared to Pakistan, their rights have been more upheld, and only the worthy are given a position in society. The nation that fought so vehemently against division today seems committed to fulfilling Jinnah's goal of assisting India to regain her footing. Of course, other reasons than fear of discrimination drove Pakistan's supporters at the time. Muslims saw a chance to seize lucrative farmlands. The idea of preachers was an Islamic-governed society. The 20% of Hindus who remained were converted to Islam. Less than a small percentage of other faiths remain in Pakistan. Farmers were assured that they would soon be free of the control of Hindu moneylenders. They just became far worse off under Muslim landlords. Even the lawyer like Jinnah sometimes engaged in demagoguery, implying that Muslims and Hindus are too unlike to ever coexist in harmony, as a part of his plan to establish Pakistan as a buffer state. However, Jinnah's greatest concern was the lack of influence that ignorant Muslims who refused to study and further their education would have in a unified India. The first split with his old colleagues in the Indian National Congress Party, particularly Mohandas K. Mahatma Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru, India's first Prime Minister a few years before independence, was motivated by this as well as Edwina Mountbatten's admiration for Nehru. This was agreed upon with the British, so Jinnah withdrew his support for a last-minute compromise mediated by the British in 1946, after Nehru's hints that Congress opposed a partitioned India after the British left. Partition showed the tragedy of the British Great Game and divide and rule policy. In response to the crimes committed by Muslims, within a few weeks after independence, 200,000 and 2 million Muslims, Hindus, and Sikhs were massacred, and 14 million were driven from their homes. Attacks against Hindu communities on the Indian side of the new boundary may have been the beginning of the largest killings. However, to counter Jinnah's argument, India's founders were willing to lose their lives. Nehru ventured to the streets with relatively little security to argue with rioters and deliver speeches supporting intercommunal peace. He emphasized that the government apparatus protect Muslims and Hindus. For over 7 decades, religious peace in India was primarily sustained by this agreement and the liberties guaranteed by its secular constitution. The corrosive effect of the changes multiplied under Modi on the such sense of belonging makes them so depressing and hazardous. Even the most appalling acts of intolerance, such as the many lynchings of Muslims around the nation, are not the main issue. At least they continue to stir uproar and get media attention on a global scale. What's worse is the fundamentalist Muslims in India's marginalization and integration into democratic India, which has been ongoing and primarily accepted. A state in India that was once persuaded of its need to defend minorities today seems unrelentingly hostile. All tiers of government, including the courts, the police, are now rife with prejudice. Indeed, India is still a democracy, not an autocratic one, with some courageous and independent journalists and campaigners. Muslims have done better defending their rights in places where a bigger percentage of the voting populace is Muslim. However, the trend lines are worrying. The political opposition in India is weak and fragmented. Modi refers to India as the mother of democracy. But the main indicator of a democracy is how it handles all its residents. There should be a single law that applies to all Indians. India must question how to correct Pakistan's mistake and make the British pay for the Great Games division, which was paid for with Indian blood.